Hey there, it's Lara here. Welcome to Witchy Wednesday. Um, it is Wednesday, September 9th, 2020, and I'm here to talk to you about the astrology of this week. And, as is usually the case, what I talk about over the course of a week doesn't just impact us for the week. Sometimes it does if it's a shorter term thing, but oftentimes it impacts us for longer than that, right? And this is one of those instances. We're going to talk about the Mars retrograde mostly today because it's happening today. Actually, this station of Mars is happening today. And if you're like me, you've been feeling it the last 2020 has been a slog, let's be honest, right? No secret there. But the last couple of days in particular have been really, really draining. It's like everything's just kind of coming to a screeching halt on an energetic level, right? Maybe not in your outward life. It's kind of an interesting paradox because here where I am, the kids have just gone back to school in some way, shape, or form. Most kids have gone back into class. We are among the minority of people here who chose to keep our kids home and do online learning. So they actually technically start tomorrow and Friday, but the information's coming in fast and furious about what's transpiring there. So a lot is going on in the outside world. A lot is going on. But internally, we can be starting to feel this sense of tension, of heaviness, of potentially anxiety, of internal kind of, combustion, or we are reaching our boiling point, potentially, that kind of thing, right? Or we may be feeling very fired up about something. And whenever a planet stations, which means it is slowing down and about to change direction. At least that's our perception here on Earth, right? So whenever a planet stations, it amplifies the energy. It really grabs our attention. And so that's what's happening the last couple of days with Mars. And Mars is retrograding in Aries. You've heard me talk about this before. You've probably heard other people talk about it. Mars is in Aries for a super long time. Normally, Mars spends 6 weeks in a sign, but because of the retrograde, it is there for like 6 months, right? And it's home sign of Aries, which is ultimately good because when a planet is in their home sign, it is it's where they want to be. It's stronger, right? They are more true to nature. And but Mars is being challenged in a big, big way, not only through the retrograde, which takes place between now and November 13th, but then we have a bit of a shadow period on either side of that as well. But the actual retrograde, September 9th to November 13th, in Aries, and that is from 28 degrees of Aries, where Mars is stationing right now, as I'm recording this, and will retrograde back all the way back to 15 degrees of Aries. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit more about those details in a minute, but just to give you sort of a to lay the groundwork here for what we're talking about in the majority of this video. So that's the big thing, and it is one of the events that is really, really, I just had the word and I lost it. Defining. It's a defining event of 2020, this Mars retrograde. And so you may have heard, me say either here or on social media. I've posted about, on Facebook and sometimes Instagram too, but just that, we've been through quite a lot already, obviously, but these next few months are telltale. So you know, again, forewarned is forearmed, right? So I'm going to just circle back for a sec here. And because if you've been around here before, you know that I like to let you know where the moon is at. And if you haven't been around here before, welcome to the channel. I should have said that before, right? Thank you for stopping by. I'm picking up some new subscribers here and there, and that's you know, fantastic. I appreciate it. I hope that what I have to say resonates with you, and if it does, then please let me know. You know, you can like the channel, or like the video, subscribe to the channel, and give me some feedback in the comments. You know, you can always reach out to me on my website as well, and the link to that is always below. But I do like to let you know where the moon is at, because the moon is the energy that impacts us sort of closest to home, in the sense that, you know, we are very much in sync with her ebbs and flows, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. And so to be more conscious of it and to begin to understand how that works, I made a little freebie for you on my website, and it's called A Guide to Working with the Moon. So you can grab it over at my website, and the link to that is below. But when you start to pay attention to where the moon is at, it can put things in context for you, can allow you to understand how we really are connected to what's going on up there, right? And how those things mirror each other, as above, so below. So right now the moon is in Gemini, lots of communication and, you know, chatty in Gemini, usually lots of information back and forth, curiosity, you know, considering different perspectives, this sort of thing. So moon is in Gemini, and she will move into Cancer on Friday, and then Leo on Sunday, and then on Tuesday, next Tuesday, she moves into Virgo, where she is readying for the new moon in Virgo, which we'll talk about next week. So, and also we now have, I don't think I mentioned this in last week's video, and Venus is now in Leo. She's moved out of Cancer, and so moved out of a cardinal sign, right? Cancer is a cardinal sign, and the cardinal signs are being really triggered. So Venus was getting a bit, you know, she had her battle gear on a bit in Cancer, and now she's moved off into Leo. So a bit of a break for Venus. And just if I were to put sort of like a catchphrase on Venus in Leo, I think simply, you know, this is about leading with heart, right? Ultimately. So, you know, you have to kind of think about, when I say leading with heart, that doesn't necessarily mean you're leading other people. You're leading yourself, right? Self-sovereignty. Leo is very much about that. So leading with heart. All right. And the other thing that's happening this week that I'll mention, it's actually happening after Mars stations retrograde, is that Jupiter is stationing direct. So we've got, actually, I got this snippet of information from the Astrology King website, and so I'll just relay it to you here. He's put it in a succinct way, so I'll use his information and credit him. So 6 planets are in retrograde motion for 4 days from September 9th to 12th, right? So that's where we're at right now. And those planets are Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Mars officially stations, I didn't mention this, stations retrograde at 6:22 p.m. today, September 9th, and that's Eastern time, because that's where I am, so you can adjust accordingly for your time zone. So Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are all retrograde right now. And then on September 12th, 13th, Jupiter, and that's depending on where you are, right? Jupiter will station direct. So there will still be 5 planets retrograde until September 29th, when Saturn finally stations direct as well. So he says 5 planets in retrograde motion happens only 4% of the time. 6 planets in retrograde motion, which we have right now between the 9th and the 12th, 13th, occurs less than 1% of the time, 0.7% of the time. So, it is a rarity that this energy is a rarity that we're experiencing right now on a number of levels, right? Which we've talked about in terms of the Capricorn piece with Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn there, with the upcoming Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in the early degrees of Aquarius, which is marking not only a new 20-year cycle, but a whole new 200-year cycle. I've spoken about that before. We started out this year with a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So, there's a lot of things that are going on in 2020 that are not the norm. Let's put it that way. And of course, that's reflected, right, out in our collective experience globally and personally, individually as well. So let's talk more specifically about the Mars retrograde. And then I'm going to go through each of the signs and I'm going to speak to where Mars is sitting for you in Aries and, some of the themes that this Mars retrograde is highlighting over the next months for you. But first I'm going to show you the chart in my fancy analog way that I'm still doing it because, I just haven't, for a few reasons, just haven't gotten high tech with it yet. But anyway, here we go, is the chart for today. So you're going to see up here, of course, we got Capricorns, the collective up here, right? All these planets holding court in Capricorn all year. Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, and there's asteroid Pallas, right? Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter are retrograde. Then we've got, we've got Neptune and Pisces here, which is opposing the sun, which can also lend to this feeling of, kind of this discombobulated feeling many of us have had over the last few days. And then, but here's the real, the big deal is Mars at 28 Aries. And I've drawn up this chart for the moment that Mars goes retrograde, which I said is 6:22 p.m. Eastern time, right? So Mars is stationing retrograde there and in Aries, and it's going to go all the way back to 15 degrees. And as it's doing that, it's going to repeatedly square, right? Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn. And because it's making a 90 degrees. Aries and Capricorn are cardinal signs. They make a 90-degree angle to each other. And this is tense. 90 degrees is an angle of tension. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I wanted to show you that. And I want to and there's, of course, there's Venus that's entered Leo now as well, right? So that's what I wanted to point out to you specifically today. So as I was saying, Aries and Capricorn, Mars in Aries, Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, Pallas Athena, all in Capricorn, are making this square, 90-degree angle. And so when planets square each other, it's tension. It's energy of tension. It's something's got to give. We need to pick a direction. We need to do something to release the energy, right? It can be quite dynamic. People with a lot of squares in their chart, actually, even though it can be quite uncomfortable, they can be people who accomplish a lot because they're always kind of working to resolve the tension of the square, right? It's like you've got to do something to divest this energy and to direct it. Because if you don't, what ultimately happens is it has you, right? And so things can transpire that will cause the energy to be released and to go somewhere. So always best to be proactive about these things. So as Mars is traveling backwards, or appearing to travel backwards through Aries, is going to cover the same ground that it's already covered, between 15 and 28 degrees of Aries, right? So it's going to have a second pass as it retrogrades. And then as it stations direct, November 13th, it will move back over those same degrees for a third and final pass. And that's what happens during any retrograde. But Mars retrograde is a little bit different. And this Mars retrograde is particularly different. Mars retrograde doesn't happen all that often. It happens once every about 2.5 years. And it's when the other personal planets, when Mercury and Venus retrograde, they do so in close proximity to the sun. So they're close to the sun. It's more like a new moon phase, right? If we're talking about it in phases. Whereas when Mars retrogrades, it's opposite the sun. And so it is more like a full moon. And yesterday I posted, an image, and it had the quote, one of my very favorite quotes, a mantra that I repeat often. And it's a Charles Bukowski quote: "What matters most is how well you walk through the fire." So to me, this just like, encapsulates Mars retrograde in Aries. But I referred to it yesterday as a cauldron, this feeling of a cauldron ready to boil over. And that's kind of really where we're at, right? So, and if you think about that, when I was just saying, when Mars retrogrades, it's opposite the sun, it's more like a full moon, right? And I was reading, I came across, I actually subscribed to her newsletter, Astro Butterfly, right? She writes some really good stuff. And there's a really good post there, really good article on Mars retrograde, and I'm going to link it below for you to refer to. It's a little bit different than some of the other things I've heard other people say and post. But what really resonated with me is that Mars retrograde, she likens it to the hero's journey, which I'm constantly referring to, the hero's journey, the heroine's journey. Joseph Campbell coined the phrase hero's journey. But there's other people, if you read people like, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who I just finished rereading Women Who Run with the Wolves. There's different women who write on the heroine's journey. Sharon Blackie, big fan of hers as well. And so, but, similar idea. And I was thinking the same thing. And then I read her post, and she does refer to it as the hero's journey. So, credit where credit is due. But what I was saying is, it's like this full moon energy, where the energy of Mars, which is already quite dynamic and powerful and in your face, right? Mars is the warrior planet. It's amped up, but it's interesting. We feel it internally, but it may manifest externally as well. We're seeing the increase of, protests and backlash, and people getting fed up with, COVID and all kinds of things going on in the world. And this is, and the heat is on in terms of the US election. And we're likely to see a lot of things amping up in the world around us, even more than they have been over these next few months. And so it's time for us all, as Mars retrogrades, to go on this personal kind of journey, right? This personal quest, if you will. And to turn the energy of Mars inwards in a healthy way. So not in a self-destructive way, because Mars can be, right? Mars can be that energy of destruction. And we don't want to self-destruct during this time. We want to bring that sort of, that fire. We want to stoke the internal fire in a sense. And Mars encourages us to really act on our desires, right? That's Mars energy. So when Mars goes retrograde, it's more about asking us to review and reflect on and revise and evaluate and get crystal clear kind of thing on those desires. So it's like Mars wants what it wants, and it wants it now, right? And so it's like when Mars stations retrograde, it's a time to kind of do some self-inquiry and ask, what lengths are we willing to go to fulfill our desires, to get what we want, but not in a way that is destructive and combative, although sometimes that's required. Sometimes that's required. You've heard me say many, many times before, another favorite quote, holy is the anger that leads to our resilience. Sometimes that right rage, that anger is necessary, but we have to use it constructively, right? So, Mars retrograde is saying, what lengths are we willing to go to get what we really desire? But that has to be in this, for the optimal outcome. It's like we need to, what lengths are we willing to go to while acting in complete integrity, while acting with courage, not necessarily following the crowd, right? Being an individual is very much Mars and Aries. And in alignment with our core desires, right? So, and speaking of core desires, whenever I use that term, I always think of Danielle Laporte's desire map, which I've talked about many, many times to many people. I used to facilitate workshops on the desire map, actually. And if you're looking for some clarity in terms of what do I really want, how do I want to feel? And Mars is this very instinctual, Mars and Aries, very instinctual energy, right? How do I want to feel? And so I would recommend that to you, Danielle Laporte's desire map. And then of course we've got this tension coming, this challenge coming from the Capricorn area of our chart where Jupiter and Pluto and Saturn are sitting. Because it's in square, right? With Mars and Aries. And these three planets, because of where they're sitting, are squaring the Mars energy repeatedly, right? And the interesting thing is that normally those squares would happen 3 times in the same signs. So, meaning Aries and Capricorn, right? But this retrograde is beginning right at the very end of Aries, right? The cardinal sign of Aries. And so by the time the third square happens between first between Saturn and Mars, and then between Jupiter and Mars, those planets will have shifted signs. So Mars will have shifted into Taurus, and Jupiter and Saturn will have just completed their great conjunction at the very beginning of Aquarius. And so all this to say that there may be a plot twist at the end of all this, and things may not turn out as we anticipated. It may not be as we expected, because the last square between Mars and Saturn is happening January 13th, 2021. So beginning of the new year. And the last square between Mars and Jupiter is on January 23rd, 2021. when, like I said, Mars has entered Taurus by then, and Saturn and Jupiter are both in Aquarius at that time, right? So very different energy. So big shifts going on right now, right? And before I go through all of the signs, just a few tips on managing this energy over the next few months. And I wrote a post about this, I think, like last week or something. But, just to revisit some of those things here, it's important right now, or it's optimal, let's say, to think before you speak or act, to slow your roll, slow down. And it can feel very much like that's not what you want to do. That's, you want to push forward. But Saturn's there going, whoa, not time for that. And that can feel quite frustrating. Frustrations can come up for us around this time. It's not really a super good time to be kind of outwardly launching anything big. I would say it's a better time to be laying the groundwork, getting really clear on what you want that to look like, getting clear on, like I said, what you really desire, right? And then, laying the groundwork now, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, revisiting these things, doing the hard work of Saturn, because Saturn's in a long-term square with Mars. I don't think I mentioned that. It's within like 3 degrees orb from August, I can't even remember now, August 15th to October 9th. It's basically one big long square between Mars and Saturn. Normally that takes place over a few days. So it's long, right? And so Saturn's like, kind of thing, like stop and go, stop and go. And so that can feel frustrating. Lots of deep breaths, right? Not taking your anger out on the wrong people. And if you are angry about something, that's okay. Anger's allowed. It's a necessary and healthy emotion to have. It's all about how we direct it, right? One of the things I've been working on all year, and it's still a work in progress and will be for a very long time, no doubt, is anger, using anger as a creative force rather than a destructive force, right? So I have Aries in the 8th house. So Mars is traveling through my 8th house and it's making contact during this retrograde several times with my Saturn-Venus conjunction. Long story short, anger is something that I really am well acquainted with and I struggle with. And so this is part of my learning process, right? So, and we all have something. But my point is to direct that anger in healthy ways and to stand up for, what you believe in and all of that. But again, doing so in ways that are proactive, that are more sort of creative, that are more in integrity and in alignment with the world that you want to see, right? The future we want to see moving forward, moving into Aquarius, right? We're moving full step into the age of Aquarius. And so that's what we want to use our anger for, and our passion. Mars is very passionate. What are we truly passionate about? What are we willing to go to the, go to the end for, to cross the finish line for? Those kinds of things, right? So there's so much more I could say about this always, but before I run out of time, I do want to take you through all 12 signs and just let you know what house Mars is retrograding through for you, based on rising sign first and foremost, if you know your rising sign, right? Or your ascendant. Is another way of saying that. So if you know that, listen for it first. And if you don't, that's okay. Still listen for your sun sign and your moon sign. The moon sign will play out more on a sort of internal emotional level. So we're going to start as per usual with the way I do it is whatever the event I'm talking about, whatever sign it's happening for in the first house. So I don't always go Aries to Pisces if you're new here. And if that's ticks you off, I'm sorry, but it doesn't feel right to me to do it that way. But before I do that, I just want to say, if you have your sun, moon, rising, or a stellium, meaning a cluster of planets, something significant around the latter degrees of the cardinal signs, namely Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, you're going to feel this. You're going to feel this, right? Definitely on a personal level. Some other signs, it always depends on how things are hitting our chart personally. Sometimes things manifest sort of, we're more of the witness to these things going on outside us in our sphere, whether it be our immediate sphere or, the global sphere. And sometimes they're more personal and sometimes they're both. So it sort of depends, but I'm going to take you through quickly what house is this happening in for you and what are those themes, right? And then keeping in mind that this energy is being squared by those planets in Capricorn. And I've talked ad nauseum about Capricorn. So you probably, if you've been listening to my videos before, you would know what house that is for you. I may mention it if I think I have time, without really saying the themes, but just to give you what house it is that Capricorn is, the square is happening from. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So here we go. Beginning in this case with Aries, because Mars is transiting your house, right? For a big old long time that I'm sure you're feeling. And so Aries, for you, this is personal, right? It is impacting you on a very personal level, this Mars through your sign and this Mars retrograde. And so things that are coming up for you have to do with the self, with it can very much be about your physical body, your physical wellness, your physical being, physical vitality, physical appearance even, but also about how you project yourself out into the world, right? How you instinctually respond to the world and to new experiences, and how the world perceives you. And so, it's a big one for you, this Mars retrograde, definitely. And something that comes up here for me that I feel like I do need to relate to Aries specifically is that, I think there could be a tendency to kind of beat up on yourself during this time and to turn that anger inward towards the self. And please don't do that. Please don't do that. It's not productive, and nor is it necessary. It's more about reflecting on what you want in relation to those themes, right? Of first house. And again, the lengths you're willing to go to, all while acting in integrity and all those things I said in the introduction. So please listen to the intro if you haven't. And then Aries, for you, this square from Capricorn is coming from your 10th house: career, public reputation, status, persona, legacy, all of those things. Okay. So that's what's going on for you. Next, we've got Pisces, because Pisces, this is happening in your 2nd house. So, for you, this Mars retrograde is, confrontation with those 2nd house themes of your personal resources, your money, your time, your energy, how you make your living. It's about, from your skills and talents. It's about what you truly value, what's really important to you. And it's about your sense of self-worth, right? And how you value yourself as well. And what sustains you ultimately. So those are the things up for review during this Mars retrograde. And how can you, some of these questions that are in the Astro Butterfly article are really good. And I'm kind of just like sharing a few of them here and there along with my own. But, how can you how can you use this Mars energy to find a new solution to an old problem as far as those second house themes go? And then for you, the square from Capricorn's happening from your 11th house, which is friendships, groups, the collective, networks, your hopes and dreams for the future. To put it simply. So next we have Aquarius. Aquarius, for you, the Mars retrograde is happening in your third house of, your immediate sphere and the people and things, in it. Your immediate environment, communications, commerce, marketing, anything that has to do with the people in your sphere, like siblings, cousins, neighbors, teammates, peers, this sort of thing, right? And communications. So that's where the Mars retrograde is happening. I think what I'm going to do is, definitely what I'm going to do is I'm going to post that link to the Astro Butterfly article. Rather than reiterating what she has said, I will just, send you over there and have a read and consider some of the questions that she's asking in that article, because I think it's really valuable. And then in relation to the third house. And then the square for you, Aquarius, is coming from your 12th house of the hidden, of the unseen, of the subconscious, of what goes on behind closed doors, right? So that's where the square is coming from. Next, we've got Capricorn. Capricorn, for you, this is happening in your 4th house, the Mars retrograde. So that's where things are getting, fired up. And it is having to do with all these themes of home, family, place of living, real estate, your emotional sense of security. And the square is happening from your sign, right? Your first house of self, physical body, physical vitality, how you project yourself out into the world, how the world perceives you. And so those two places are in tension. So Capricorn, for you, it's like tapping the brakes here a little bit and reevaluating this area of life and the actions that you really want to take and what you really desire there in terms of 4th house. Next, we've got Sagittarius, where the Mars retrograde is happening in your 5th house of the fun things in life and what sparks joy for you, of children and your creative self-expression. And so this is the area that's really being fired up by the Mars retrograde. But also, there are some obstacles to overcome here, definitely. And the square is coming from a financial house, ultimately, the 2nd house. I mean, it's about your resources, your money, your time, your energy, what you value, how you sustain yourself, and, your sense of self-worth. And so, those two areas are in a bit of tension that needs to be worked through over the Mars retrograde. Definitely listen to the intro. Definitely check out the Astro Butterfly article I'm going to link to below as well. Next, we've got Scorpio. Scorpio, for you, the Mars retrograde is happening in your 6th house. So this is your daily routine, your daily grind, issues around health and wellness, issues of how you are in service kind of thing. And also, the square is coming from your 3rd house of communications, of marketing, of your immediate environment and the people in it, that sort of thing, right? And so for you, Scorpio, a reevaluation perhaps of, your daily activities and where you're putting your energy and your time, and that sort of thing, right? Definitely listen to the intro, Scorpio, for the bigger picture here. Next, we've got Libra. Libra, for you, this Mars retrograde is happening in your 7th house of close personal relationships and contracts and agreements. So this is the area that's being fired up, being inflamed perhaps, but needing a bit of a reevaluation on what you truly want here, right? Out of this area of life. And then this is squaring your 4th house, Capricorn, home, family, roots, place of living, that kind of thing, right? And so those are the two areas in tension for you, Libra. And next we've got Virgo. Virgo, for you, the Mars retrograde is happening in your 8th house. That can be a bit intense because the 8th house is an intense house that has to do with other people's money and how you are entangled with other people, your intimate connections and relationships, sort of like deep psychological issues. And this square is happening to the 5th house of what sparks joy for you, of children, of creative projects, this sort of thing. So Virgo, definitely check out that Astro Butterfly article, and also, listen to the intro for sure. Sorry if I'm rushing here, but the camera's gonna run out. Next, we've got Leo. Leo, for you, this is happening in the 9th house, the Mars retrograde. So this is the area that's being challenged, right? From the 6th house. And Leo, the 9th house is this house that has to do with your worldview, how you see the world, your philosophy, your belief system. It has to do with teaching and learning, and what you can learn from people and places that are different from you. And then you've got this square from the 6th house of your daily routine, right? And health and wellness and these kinds of things. So that's where the challenge is happening from. So listen to the intro, definitely. Okay, Leo. And next we've got Cancer. 10th house is what's being impacted by the Mars retrograde for you, Cancer, and that's a public house, and you're a cardinal sign, and this is, tense potentially. So that Mars retrograde energy in the house of legacy, career, public ambition, reputation, that sort of thing, authority, and then being challenged by the 7th house, Capricorn, of one-to-one close personal relationships. So those two areas of the chart are in tension for you over this Mars retrograde. So listen to the intro for the scoop. Next, we've got Gemini, where the Mars retrograde is impacting your 11th house, right? And this has to do with your connection to the group, friends, networks, sort of associations, clubs, that kind of thing, and your hopes and dreams for the future and the people that can help you get there. And then this is in tension with the 8th house, Capricorn, for you, other people's resources and your entanglement with other people, your intimate connections with other people, issues, of psychological sort of wounding and healing as well. And so that's what's going on for you, Gemini. Listen to the intro for sure. And then Taurus, last but not least in this case, your 12th house is where Mars is retrograding, right? So this is a very hidden house. Mars retrograding through the 12th house, internal sort of fires, but it's what goes on behind closed doors. It is what goes on in the subconscious. It can have to do with your dreams. It can have to do with, your connection to spirit and the unseen, and perhaps, self-sabotaging behaviors, that sort of thing. So that's where the Mars is firing up that part of the chart for you. And then it's in this conflict with Capricorn, right? It's in tension with Capricorn in the 9th house, which is your worldview, your philosophy, your belief system, issues around teaching and learning and people that are different from you and what you can learn from them. Sometimes has to do with travel, foreign travel. So definitely listen to the intro and, check out that Astro Butterfly article for some really great information as well, Taurus. Oh my goodness. So I know that was a bit of a rush. I didn't want the camera to run out and have to do a second take. I'd love to know how things are playing out, how things are feeling for you. You can connect via the comments. You can ask a question if you want. If I kind of rushed through and wasn't super clear for your particular rising sign, then I'm happy to answer in more detail in the comments. And, just know that if you're feeling really exhausted right now, you're not alone. If you're feeling challenged, if you're feeling anxious and tense, it's you're not alone. This is the time we're in. Try to use that energy. Rest when it's necessary. get clear on where you really want to put your attention and drive and will, and that sort of thing. Okay. So take good care, and I'll talk to you next week for the new moon in Virgo. Okay. Bye for now.